I'm Marlene Sorenson, co-founder of Zeteo Community, along with my husband, Kenton. I really didn't know anything about human trafficking, sexual exploitation, really anything at all, except what I had learned from organization in Thailand. So really knew nothing, didn't know what was going on here. In February of 2016, the Lord just deposited trafficked women in my heart. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what to do with it. And I just kind of put it on the back burner and just thought, okay, I guess this will come up when it needs to. And it literally did within 3 months. I was given an all-expense paid trip to Maui with my cousin. As I was getting ready to go, my daughter-in-law just said, hey, there's this book. I think you'd like to read it. I know you don't like to read fiction, which I don't usually read fiction, she said, but I think you would love this book. I said, okay, downloaded it, had no idea what it was about. And also nobody knew that this thing was in my heart about trafficked women. So the book was called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I get on the plane to go to Maui and I begin reading the book. And before I landed in Maui, I learned that this book was about a young girl whose mother died and she was sold, trafficked, became a prostitute. And I knew that this book was meant to stir something in me deeper, and it did. My last day in Maui, I'm sitting on my bed reading the last chapter, and it was about her being rescued by a banker and his family. And they get a house and they go out, she goes out and she helps other women that she's known who are out there being exploited. She brings them into the home and gives them a new start in life. And I'm crying, sitting on my bed reading this last chapter, and I knew that that's what God was asking us to do. I left Maui and I came home and I said to my husband, you need to read this book, and I believe we're supposed to do a house for women who've been trafficked and exploited. And he was like, okay, well, let's pray. So we did, and literally within weeks of the trip from Maui, we began running into people. One was at a wedding that Kenton was performing the ceremony, and somebody here locally who works with another organization, and I was just talking with her about it, and she said, Marlene, we get calls all the time from the FBI asking us to take these women who've been trafficked, but we can't because if they don't fit our criteria. I was like, you're kidding. I was just blown away. So a few weeks later, we were at another wedding and at the reception sitting next to a retiring detective, and didn't know him, he didn't know us, and we started up a conversation. All of a sudden, he's talking about the trafficking and how prevalent it is here in Madison. Once again, we were blown away, and we knew that something's going on, and God has made it clear that we're to do something. We're to be a part of the solution. So we started down that road. We set up a 501c3, began just talking about it with people, and I started just looking around the country, researching who's doing residential programming for women who've been trafficked, and found a large organization in Atlanta, Georgia called Wellspring Living. Went down there with a friend and did a week-long training on trafficking and trauma. So began learning about the trauma side of trafficking. Felt like I was taking a drink out of a fire hydrant. It was so much information, so good though. And it just made me realize how much there was to learn, how much more there was to learn. And that this wasn't a one organization, get her all done. This is a, oh my gosh, huge collaboration. Everybody bringing their piece to the table and working together. And so we connected with several organizations around the country, but then also locally. It shifted, because what I thought at the beginning was we were just going to take a get a house, take in a couple of women. Then I got a call from a lieutenant at the Madison Police Department who said, hey, we heard that you're talking about doing housing. Would you come down and talk to us? Went down there, and he had 3 of his detectives there. And he started telling us what's going on in Madison and what they're doing, sting operations and stuff, but they can get the women out, and then there's nowhere for them to go. And they said, the greatest need is housing and programming for these women, and there isn't any. He said, the public is not aware really of what's going on. There's not awareness. And he said, it's very dark, and people have no idea. So I left that meeting, and a couple days later, I was sitting, I'm an early riser, sitting with my coffee, and Jesus actually, and just feeling very overwhelmed. And I said, I don't know how to do this. It feels very overwhelming to me. Even though I had been learning more about it, it still felt overwhelming. I felt him just speak to my heart and say, your vision is too small. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm already overwhelmed. My vision is too small. And I got this picture in my mind of houses on a cul-de-sac, and horses, and a community house, and a garden, and an art studio. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty extravagant. God, what do you really want that? And I sensed in my heart, heard him say, I am an extravagant God, and I love these women and their children. And I'm like, and their children. That was the first time I knew we would be taking women and their children if they had them. So that shifted us into a whole new realm of, wow, this is bigger. This is a bigger vision. So we don't know how to do this, and so God, would you lead the way? And also my prayer was, God, would you do this in a way that's not the norm, so that at the end of the day, you get the credit, that people see you, that these women and children realize that you are an extravagant God and you love them more than anybody ever could, and that they belong. That was the vision, and it still is. So from that point on, people just started coming to us and saying, hey, I have this architect, he wants to talk to you. I have this contractor, he wants to talk to you. And just begin connecting more and more with people. People were coming to us saying, hey, I have this gifting, I'd love to help. And it's just been an amazing journey.